No superhero singularly hates the X-Men or the mutants. In most cases, the tension between mutants and the rest of the superhero community are practically non-existent. Usually, at most, it's a one-on-one beef between two characters specifically, but I'm Adam Andrews, and I can nitpick to bring you the top 10 superheroes who hate the X-Men. Coming in at number 10 is Deadpool. Deadpool is a bit of a shocking way to kick off this list. He himself is like almost a mutant, but not actually a mutant, but he also says he's a mutant, but is then corrected by the actual mutants, and then sometimes people classify him as a mutant, but then others will classify him as not one. Do you understand why it's a little confusing? His mutant healing factor was derived from Wolverine's own, and he became who he is thanks to Weapon X, which are notorious for working on mutants. But whether he is a mutant or not, one thing is definitely true. Despite the fact that Wade has tried to count himself among their numbers, Deadpool finds the X-Men to just be a little too annoying for his own tastes. And that feeling basically just stems from the fact that they take things way too seriously, where he takes almost nothing seriously, which means when he does work with them, it's usually not for a very long time. To say Deadpool hates anyone feels kind of wrong. I think he's just kind of insane, but he definitely finds them annoying. Number 9, Black Bolt. The Inhumans are essentially a species of mutants created by the Kree experimenting on humans a long time ago. One of the ways the Inhumans came to be was through the Terrigen Mists. When they're exposed to the mists, they gained powers and they would become an Inhuman. Unfortunately, a cloud of Terrigen Mists found its way to Earth, and it turns out that these mists are incredibly deadly for the mutant population. The mutants eventually learned that they could change the composition of the mist in order to make it safe for mutants, but at the cost of not creating more Inhumans. The problem is, it didn't actually make sure that was okay to do with the Inhumans. They just started attacking the Inhumans, causing a conflict and causing Black Bolt to use his Scream to take down Cyclops. This resulted in Emma Frost using Dazzler to attack Black Bolt and leave him imprisoned in limbo and without the ability to use his powers. The worst part is that if the X-Men just talked to the Inhumans, which they eventually do, the Inhumans are totally cool with figuring out a resolution. So I'm kind of on Black Bolt's side with this one. Look, I definitely know some of these choices will split people's opinions, so this is a perfect opportunity to invite you down to the comments to make sure you let me know your thoughts on my opinions here. I'm giving you my takes with examples, so I'd love to hear your well-informed opinions. Coming in at number 8 is Blade. Blade is someone who sometimes feels like he's relegated to his own corner of the Marvel Universe, a fact that he and mutants technically kind of share. But Blade is also pretty damn ruthless. His main self-appointed purpose in life is to eradicate vampires. It's what he lives for. But when one of those vampires is also a mutant, then it causes some discourse. During the X-Men Curse of the Mutants, the X-Men, and more specifically Cyclops, asked this vampire slayer for his expertise and assistance in dealing with their vampire problem. When the depowered mutant Jubilee was turned into a vampire though, Blade wanted to exterminate her, straight up, which shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone. But Blade also shouldn't have been surprised that the X-Men were not down for this course of action. The disagreement may not have been Blade hates the X-Men, but going to a vampire slayer and expecting him not to do what he does is a little annoying, don't you think? I think so. Number 7, Wasp. Look, you may not agree with me on this one, and that's fine. But I will source one point of evidence that Wasp does not have a favorable view of the X-Men and mutants in general. In Uncanny Avengers, which followed the X-Men vs. Avengers arc and ended with the passing of Xavier at the hands of Cyclops, Captain America decided that the best way to repair things was to put more mutants onto the Avengers and have the new team, led by Alex Summers, Havoc. That's Cap cherry-picking the best-looking mutants to represent them, but the addition of a few mutants to the Avengers under the ideology of a Professor X meant that some things changed around the Avengers mansion. Like when Rogue tried to replace a painting of the original Avengers with a painting of Xavier. It's in a bit of poor taste, sure, but when Wasp walked in on it happening, she was more than a little upset. And it seemed genuinely anti-mutant to me, just a little bit. And then she had this whole weird thing where she tried to design an X-Men themed clothing brand, including Cyclops themed glasses that seemed in poor taste, to help fund the Avengers. And she referred to UX types as being depressing and not optimistic. Then in issue number 8 of that series, she makes another comment about the quote X-Men types and how they are keeping secrets. She just makes all these little snide comments about the mutant members of the team. She definitely has some kind of hate going on here. I don't care what you say, it's true. Wasp acts like all mutants are superheroes, for sure, but superheroes who don't know what they're doing, and that's rude. Number 6, Captain America. Captain America does not hate mutants. He stands against inequality, it's one of his things, fighting for the little guy. But gosh darn it, he sure seems to not care about them or their cause. Captain America and the Avengers in general don't usually think of the whole race of mutants when they make decisions, and that often leads to catastrophic events. A prime example being Avengers vs. X-Men. The X-Men knew from the very beginning that the Phoenix Force was coming to join with Hope Summers to revive the mutant species, and that if it didn't find Hope, it would destroy the Earth. They knew this because the mutant Cable went to the future, where the Avengers had succeeded in, quote, protecting Hope from the Phoenix Force, and it was bad. Cyclops made this pretty clear to Captain America and the Avengers, but they didn't trust the X-Men, this group of powerful mutants with decades of experience with the Phoenix Force, and who have hosts of the Phoenix Force among their ranks. The subconscious anti-mutant prejudice that Cap holds, coupled with his self-righteousness, causes him to not trust mutants and to think that he knows better than them. It's subtle for sure, but it's there all the same. Captain America has been at the center of many debates due to his willful negligence in regards to the mutant struggle. He doesn't hate mutants, but he also takes no noticeable action in their favor, nor does he like it when the X-Men threaten to overturn the current peace, even if it's for the betterment of their own species. But he does create the Unity Squad, so there's that. Number 5, Hawkeye. Look, Hawkeye is kinda just a bit of a jerk to everyone. And it makes a tiny bit of sense since he's constantly playing the compensation game with everyone else, since he's just a guy with a bow and an arrow. But man, does he say some problematic anti-mutant garbage sometimes. In Secret Wars, for example, without showing any anti-mutant sentiment before, Hawkeye grabs Cyclops by the scruff of his shirt and screams in his face, "You mutants stick together, huh? Well, sticking to a blood-soaked maniac like him doesn't speak well of you, pal." He was referring to Magneto, and well, fair point, Hawkeye, but what's all this "you mutants" talk? Look, I'm reaching for this one for sure, but in the Ultimate Universe, this sentiment is actually a bit more noticeable, and Hawkeye is certainly more of a jerk in general there. And he even took glee in taking out multiples of Multiple Man, although that was most likely because he was grieving. Look, just let me have this one, okay? Number 4, Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Witch is another unique choice for this list, as she herself is indeed a mutant. But it's the fact that she is a mutant that is why she is on this list in the first place. It is a gross understatement to say that Wanda has not had the easiest life. Being an Avenger for years, the team that she has always been more inclined to anyways, this mutant saved the world on many occasions, but the end of the Scarlet Witch's marriage to Vision and the loss of her children caused a mental breakdown. A breakdown that, coupled with her reality warping capabilities, caused the passing of a number of Avengers. Once the heroes decided that she needed to be dealt with, she warped reality to a world where Magneto was in charge of everything. But in the climax of that story, Wanda, in an extremely emotional moment, basically revealed her hate for mutants stemmed from the fact that being one has caused her so much pain and grief. She hated herself for being a mutant, and with 3 words, she then relieved almost all the mutants on Earth of their mutant abilities, putting the entire race into endangerment. Number 3, Tony Stark. Tony Stark, Iron Man, is on this list for an extremely similar reason to Captain America. As one of the leading men in the non-mutant superhero community, he makes some rather interesting decisions with some pretty selfish intent. Just like Captain America, I wouldn't say that Tony hates mutants or the X-Men, but I would say that he is usually ignorant to the horror which the X-Men have had to endure solely for being born different. For Tony, his example of not caring comes from the superhuman Civil War. Iron Man attempted to recruit the X-Men during Civil War, and Emma Frost rightly pointed out that the Avengers did absolutely nothing when Genosha was attacked by the Sentinels. 16 million mutants passed away, and the other heroes, Iron Man included, were almost nowhere to be found. But the bigger elephant in the room is that the act that Tony is even supporting in his Civil War is the Superhuman Registration Act, which itself was just an evolution of the Mutant Registration Act that purposefully segregated mutants for being who they were born to be. Tony didn't really care about that. He cared about having powerful pawns on his side. He would rather have them on his side since they are useful to keep around, but he doesn't actually care about their struggle, and he doesn't even fully trust them. Also, an imposter Tony Stark called them all filthy muties once, so there's that. Number 2, Reed Richards. Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four is not overtly a mutant or X-Men hater. The Fantastic Four that he is arguably the leader of have done their time and earned their place among the whole superhuman community, including among the mutants, as the Fantastic Four were one of the few groups who actively showed support of mutants, even if they didn't really know the best way to do so. But despite that, when things get personal, people's true colors come out for all to see. Reed may have not overtly said he hates mutants, but when it was revealed that Franklin Richards, his son, was actually a mutant, Reed then implanted a mutant nullifier into his own kid. He tried to fix Franklin despite the fact that he didn't try to do that when Franklin was not a mutant. I'd say that is pretty highly suspicious, and Susan Richards would probably agree with me. The people of the internet think this may have played a part in her trying to shack up with Namor. The worst part is Franklin wasn't actually a mutant. He just subconsciously used his vast powers to give himself an X gene. Reed needs to check himself. And finally, in at number 1, the Eternals. This may be a bit of an interesting choice. The hate for the X-Men here is almost an involuntary thing. So the Eternals, a celestial created experiment and offshoot of humanity, have an eternal struggle against another offshoot, the Deviants. Eternals have hardwired programming to protect the Celestials and to correct access deviation. A recent revelation about mutants and deviants causes the new Eternal leader, a pretty sinister guy by the name of Druig, to decide that the mutants represented excess deviation. Thanks to that, war is declared on all mutants, including obviously the X-Men. Following their programming, Eternal assassins come to Krakoa to destroy the Five. Massive war machine Eternals called the Hex are unleashed on Krakoa. Uranos, one of the oldest and nastiest of the Eternals, is unleashed on Arakko, and millions of mutants are taken out by the Eternals and their war machines. Now, to be totally fair, not all Eternals are on board with that. The main heroic Eternals like Thena and Icarus and Ajak and Makari split themselves off as separate Eternal factions trying to fix the situation, and when it reaches its crazy huge penultimate climax, things do go back to a bit of a normalcy, but for a while, their Eternals tried to wipe out the mutants simply for existing. There you go. That was kind of fun, so please be sure to let me know your thoughts down below. I've been Ad Managers, this is Top 10 Nerd, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace out.